Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday again. We do this stream every Tuesday, and every time I say Happy Tuesday, I have to think about what day of the week it is. I imagine that's maybe a universal problem. Taco Tuesday. I haven't had a taco since you were in town, Sabrina. It's been a hot minute. Welcome to the Botpress Basics office hours. If you're new here, my name is Robert. I host these once a week. If you are a veteran here, I hope you are happy with the sound of my voice as always. Let me run you all through as people trickle in. Hello from Argentina. As people trickle in, I'm going to run you through the agenda for today. Tutelage Tuesday. Yeah, that one's more my speed. I don't know about the quality of my tacos, but maybe my tutelage is a bit better. Let me run you through the agenda for today. So I have, by and large, what I'd like to get done today is I'd like to build a bot that can help with studying. So studying can mean a lot of different things. So I think I'm going to take a step back today and rather than focus on some of the tools in the Botpress Cloud Studio, as I normally tend to do, I think what I'm going to do today is maybe start, we'll work backwards as it were. So I'm going to cast myself back a very long time ago when I was in college and talk about the kind of productivity tool that I needed then and see if I can build one on Botpress. I have ideas and I've tested this before, so I'm not going in blind. But this is the topic for today is can we build like an AI study bot, kind of like an AI study partner, and see what we can do with that. So let me, I'll just share my screen here with all of you. And that's kind of the plan for today. Before I jump in and I start building, I want to say, as always, if you're in chat and you have questions, you can just drop them in chat and I'll respond to them as the time goes on. No problem, as always. That is my either I or Sabrina or whoever else is hanging out in chat will get to them. Otherwise. Potentially, I will just send you to Patrick's developer streams on Thursdays if they're above my head. But you know. All right. So let's think about this. So very often when we're building bots, I think we think about bot building as, at least I do, being so close to it. I start with a feature and I think about, okay, what can I build on top of this feature? What can I do to showcase this cool thing that Botpress now allows? And with the kind of rapid pace of things coming out of our engineering team, it's like very exciting to do that. But that's not really how the real world works. I think the quote unquote real world generally tends to go through the line of, I have a problem, I need to solve that problem, I need a tool to solve that problem. As tools get more expansive these days, and as the things that these tools can do, so different pieces of software, right from your browser can do more elegant and sophisticated things, it can be difficult to understand which tool to use for which purpose, and there's a lot of overlapping use cases and blah, blah, blah. So it's no longer the days of the internet from my childhood where you had one website for studying and you had one website for video games, and that was it. I think those days are behind us. So let's talk about how we can build a chatbot, which is typically something, if you've watched these streams for a while, or if you use Botpress, it's typically something we associate with like e-commerce, maybe like internal knowledge management, so managing like human resources policies and all that. That's typically what we consider chatbots to be, but I'd like to push that envelope a bit today and see what we can hack around in the topic of like personal productivity and studying. Again, I was reminded of a conversation yesterday that I had with Patrick, who runs Thursday's developer streams, and he told me, he asked me a question that was very striking. So this is what we'll begin today's stream with. He asked me, what were like moments of emotion in college that you remember very strongly? So not like what happened or like what was the thing that you needed, but instead, what emotions can you feel? Can you remember feeling the most strongly? And if you're sitting there wondering, what the heck does any of this have to do with chatbot building software? Don't worry, we'll get to it in a sec. The idea here is when you're building software, you're building a SaaS product like this one, it's nice for it to be useful, right? And so to address those moments of emotion. And so if you were anything like me in college, you took too many classes and there was a lot going on. And I was in college maybe like X number of years ago at a point where software like this was still in its infancy. So things like task management kind of hadn't been resolved yet. And it was all kind of a mess. So I spent a lot of time sending emails to myself with lists of things I had to accomplish the next day, which were not good at all. That was not useful. And so it's nice that we're in a place today where we can maybe manage those tasks a bit better. Yeah, like nobody likes feeling dumb, or nobody likes feeling like disorganized, or any of those feelings that they feel it doesn't feel good. And as Sabrina says, thinking about the pains is important before going into bot building. So my biggest pain in when I was a student was that I was very disorganized, just by virtue of the fact that it's hard to remain organized when you're a student. You've got tons of different classes, tons of different assignments, all on different due dates. Calendar management is like A, something nobody teaches you, and B, certainly when I was a student was insufficient. The tools I had at my disposal were insufficient to kind of manage that. And I would argue that in some respects they still are, right? The concept of a calendar is perhaps something we haven't updated in too long, right? It's like, however many thousand years. So let's set the stage, as we always do at the beginning of these streams. So the bot I'm building for right now is a student who has lots of different classes, and they want a better way to manage what assignments do I have due, calendar management, what books do I need, those kinds of things. So all kinds of queries you might have as a student about the various scholastic duties that you encounter throughout your various semesters. And so I want you to take note of the way that I just presented these problems to you. So even before we start building anything, I'll just use a comment node, and maybe we can jot down some of our thoughts, right? We can get our thoughts going. Okay, so come back to me, comment node. All right, so we had what exams do I have? When are those exams? What books do I need for each course, right? Like these are all questions that you might ask. You might ask of your syllabus, for example. And so I'm imagining a college-age student here, just to be clear. What books do I need for each course? Like how much of my grade is my final exam worth? Yeah, what day and time are my classes? Thank you, Tyler. What else do I have here? Oh, I think a really good one that I would have loved is like, what am I reading in April, or like X month, right? Like what, et cetera, et cetera. So this is our comment node. If you're not familiar with comment nodes in Botpress, you can just use them to annotate your various workflow. Here, let's give it a color. I'm gonna give it amber because that screams student to me. Okay, so I want you to take note of, this is kind of like the assignment I've given myself to build this bot, is I wanted to be able to answer these questions. But I want you to take note of the fact that I've asked questions, right? The idea behind what we're going to be building today is that a lot of the way that our brains work, it's conversational. And so conversation kind of impacts the way that we interact with each other, but also increasingly the way that we interact with software. This is true of voice-activated things, so you can think of things like Siri and Google AI Assistant, Voice Assistant, and all that. But equally, just the framework of interacting with software conversationally is really important because it presupposes two things. So the first is that I can formulate the need that I have in a specific question better than I would be able to if I were to just filter through tons and tons of notes. So for example, if the question I have is I want to know what exams do I have, the possible ways I can go about getting this information are reading through all of my different syllabi, so going through each one of those paper files. If you're as old as me, they were paper back in the day. Going through all of those pieces of paper and understanding like, okay, when are my exams? Or maybe consulting those files online. Maybe using search can speed up that process or expedite it a bit further. But still, at the end of the day, you're doing the same thing, right? You're leafing through some files or folders to find this information. But really what you'd like to be able to do, what the ideal would be here, is to ask some like omniscient force, what exams do I have? And they could just tell you reliably what exams you have. So this is somebody who knows your syllabi better than you do and can consult that information quickly. I hope that you can see where I'm going with this, and if you can't, no worries, because that might have been a bit of an opaque example. But this is a really great thing for an LLM to do. You can give an LLM some information, in this case like a syllabi, and this is really a good example of unstructured data. And you can ask it questions like, what exams do I have, and when, and whatnot. And so let's take an example here. So now I'm building this bot for a student, or for me when I was in college. I had vastly different hair then, but I won't show you a photo of that, don't worry. But in any case, so where would I begin? What should I do here? So if I'm thinking about me in college, I think the first thing that I would do is I would say, okay, well, let me add a folder for each of the classes I was taking. And these are going to be real life examples of my undergrad degree because it's what I remember most closely. And I've actually got some files left over that will use it as an example. But the idea here is, okay, I've got a folder for English 203. Maybe I'll use a folder for English 304 and like another folder for English 405. And just for the sake of posterity, I'll put in English 228. English 228 is where I met my best friends in the whole world. It was Canadian Literature 1. That was a good time. All right, so the basic fundamental of this bot here is that I've got a folder to organize each of my classes in. And now our task is to understand how does that map onto specific workflows, right? Because the idea here is Botpress is organized around workflows where you can interact conversationally with the bot. All right, let's keep going. So the first thing I want to do is maybe add a workflow for each of these classes. So English 203, English 304, English 405, and English 228, the best friend class. And what I'm going to do, no science classes, no software. No, Tyler, no poli-sci, no, nothing. I was an English major through and through. I did a double majors in English and another humanities related minor, so. Not a software engineer here. If you want software engineering, you must visit Patrick's stream on Thursdays. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to nest each of these workflows in their respective folders. If you're curious about what I'm doing here, and maybe this seems like a bit arcane to you, I would recommend visiting a video on our YouTube channel where I teach you how to separate knowledge bases to specific workflows. So if you want to be granular about what knowledge bases are accessible for which workflows, we're doing this process here. So there's a video on our YouTube channel showing this further. If you're watching this on YouTube at some point in the future, I'll link it up here. I think, is it here or here? And if you're watching in chat, you can just go straight to our YouTube channel. But so the idea here is I'm nesting each of these, A, to remain organized in my building process, and B, because I want to have discrete knowledge bases available for each of these classes. All right, on the topic of knowledge bases, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my new knowledge base, and I'm going to title this one English 203 Syllabus. Maybe just to make sure that we're all on the same page, a syllabus is a document that you're given typically at the beginning of a university class that lists out kind of like a schedule or calendar of the entire course. So it tells you what to read on what day. This is how it worked for English degrees anyways. But it tells you what to read on what days and what assignments are due and when are they going to be due and how much of your grade are they worth and so on and so forth. So kind of like a dashboard for your class, if you will. I have the very same, I have the original copy of the English 203 syllabus I had back in the day when I was a student. So I'm going to upload the very same one just to show you here. So this is a very real thing. This is a live example, folks. And so that's what's happening here. And I'll just make sure to add a description about my knowledge base. So this is the syllabus for the course English 203. And now I'm going to nest it here in my workflow, and everything is nice and tidy and cozy together. I see a question in chat. When you're at folders in KB, how to define order for bot to look into? Daniel, what do you mean? I'm going to answer what I think your question is asking. And if I'm not answering it, then please follow up in another way. But so when we talk about order, the first thing your bot is going to do is check, okay, is there like a global knowledge base that I'm looking for here? Depending on what workflow you're in. So if I'm in English 203, it's just going to look for whatever knowledge bases you have in that specific folder. If you're in main, so if you're in the main workflow of your bot, it's going to check for whatever is in the main workflow, whatever knowledge bases there are there. If you want to know about order, your bot is going to consult the knowledge bases in the order in which you added them to your bot. So if you added one first, that's going to be like the default one that it'll look at. In theory, however, and this is, I'm going to soapbox for a sec, but in theory, that shouldn't matter because you shouldn't have knowledge bases that contain the same information. And what I mean by that is it shouldn't matter technically if you have a knowledge base that was uploaded a week later, because you shouldn't be uploading a knowledge base that has the same information as a previous one that you've uploaded. So if your bot has two different answers to the same question, that's not great conversation design or bot building practice or whatever you want to call it, because you're going to be providing different answers to different users, and that's we want to stray away from unreliability there and give your LLMs the best possible chance of success. So in theory, that's how it works, but it shouldn't be a problem, or it shouldn't affect the dynamic in any way, really, because you should always be segregating your information in that way. Yeah, as Sabrina says, you don't want to pollute your bot. So if you have one knowledge base that says you should be eating broccoli, and if you change your mind the following week and you upload another one that says you should be eating cauliflower, you should really go back and delete the broccoli one, right? Because you don't want to be providing conflicting information. Okay. So back to our study bot that we've begun building here. This is kind of the foundation of it. So let's say I'm taking 4 classes this semester. I've got my information here. Oh, this popped out. And so I've got my folders. And then let's just say, for the sake of this example and time and whatnot, I won't do this for each class, but let's say I did this for each class. Now, let's think about this in the context of, let's say I was hiring an assistant to be my personal kind of like note keeper, schedule keeper, assignment keeper, etc. What's the first thing that I would expect them to ask me? I would expect them to ask me, which class do you want information about, right? Because if I've got a question about things like, what exams do I have? When are those exams? They're going to be related to a specific class. And so I want to make sure that I'm asking about the right one. So let's create a node here at the beginning of our bot that kind of runs through this. So I'll say, I'll name this node which class, and I'll use a single choice card to send my user where they want to go. In this case, the user is me because I'm building this for myself. All right, so single choice, which class do you want information about today? And of course, I feel like I should say this here, but you can get creative with this and it can be fun. And I think the point of software in the current age of the world is that it can be delightful, right? So you can use the personality agent, for instance, to make this speak to you like Miriam Margoyle, so I think is a hilarious person. But I'm going to keep it simple today. But the point is that software can be delightful and it can be fun to use. All right, so let's add some choices. I'll say English 203, English 304, English 405, and English 228. And so the idea here is when I begin chatting with my assistant here, I'm going to I'm going to select one of these options. Of course, since I only have English 203 as an option, I'm just going to work with this example. So let's say I've chosen English 203. What I want to do is execute a workflow. Again, perhaps if you're unfamiliar with what executing a workflow does, it just sends you down the specific workflow that we created earlier. So what I'm going to do here is execute the English 203 workflow. And so now when my user, or in this case me, selects English 203, I'll get sent to the English 203 workflow. All right, let's pause and recap where we are now. And I'll also catch up on chat while I'm doing this. All right, so Daniel, you say, I had a situation that the bot got lost and said that it doesn't know the answer in one knowledge base and didn't follow another knowledge base. But how can I change order later on? This is interesting. You could try naming your chatbot numbered names. I'm not sure. I don't know if that would affect the order in which they're consulted. But I can't understand the first part of your question. So it got lost in one KB, but it didn't check the other KB. That's not that behavior I would expect. I would expect it to consult all of the knowledge bases you've uploaded to your bot. So I'm curious if there's maybe something else at play here. Koala Mugger, what a great name. Is it possible to leverage a third-party vector database host like Pinecone to expand the KB capacity of a bot? I don't see why not. I think you would have to deal with their API on their end. But I don't see why that's not that would be impossible. I will say this is a question that is much better suited for Patrick's Thursdays live streams because it is well beyond my wheelhouse. But again, you can absolutely do that. I will say if you're interested in expanding the vector allowance that you have on free bots, and equally if you're interested in expanding the storage capacity of your entire bot, we will be introducing some changes in the future that will allow you to do this. The idea is we want to limit the amount of dependencies that we introduce on things like third-party vector databases. So I think the answer to your question is yes, but then also like if you just want to do it in Botpress, perhaps stay tuned. That's the answer I have for your question. Koala Mugger. What a great name. All right, so returning back to our studying bot here, this is kind of the main menu, if you will. So I'm going to be selecting each of these options. Let's just test this out just for, I can't say what I want to say because there's a profanity in it. I'll say just for giggles, and there's another word missing there. All right, so what class do I want information about today? I want information about English 203. Let's take a look at what happened in the emulator here. So we can see here captured variable just because that's the single choice I made. And then we entered the workflow English 203. Let's just navigate to that just to make sure that we see it. And there's actually nothing in English 203 yet. So we haven't actually done anything. So this is where the meat and potatoes would exist, right? So this is the place where we would be asking questions of our bot, and then hopefully getting some good answers. So here, I'll just add another capture card. Again, what I want is my bot to ask me a question, right? So I'll just pop in a raw input and I'll just say something like, what do you want to know about English 203? And I'll make sure that knowledge answering is enabled because remember, we've got our knowledge base here that holds the syllabus. Just for some testing purposes, I'm going to make this into a loop. So I'll continue asking questions. I wouldn't recommend this in a real bot, but since we're demoing here, this is exactly what's happening. All right, let's test again. So if I say hi, and I want information about English 203, my bot says, what do you want to know about English 203? And here, maybe I'll say something like, give me the required texts for this course. So for example, let's say I'm at the bookstore and I need to know what the books I need are, and I don't have the paper copy of the syllabus on me because who carries around papers anymore? And I'm locked out of my Google Drive, or I want a faster way to access this information, or whatever the case may be. I just want to ask someone the question. I just want to ask somebody and then give me the answer, right? That is the easiest way to get information, is why people like Reddit so much, for example. So we see here, I say, give me the required text for this course, and we get the answer. The required texts for English 203 are, and we see them listed here. I can confirm that these are accurate because these are the ones that I read a long time ago. You might just have to take my word for it, but in any case, you can see here the answer was found in the knowledge base. So a couple of things I want to show off in this example. The first is that this is not a query. It's a query, but it's not a question. There's no question mark, and there's not really a question here. It's kind of like instruction, but I want to expand your mind about the things you can ask of a knowledge base. Right here, we're prompting it with a task or an instruction, and we're still receiving the correct answer anyways, which is great. And so now we've gotten the correct answer. Let's try some more questions out. What if I wanted to say something like, what if someone, I'm having lunch with a friend and they say, oh, what are you reading in April? And I say, I have no idea. I don't know what my schedule is. That's like months away. I can ask my bot this question. I can say, what am I reading in April? My bot will consult my schedule for English 203, and it will say the following, which is pretty cool. I will say of this list, Kazuo Ishiguro is probably my favorite. Not that anybody asked, but just in case you were going to, I beat you to the punch. Bot King asks, why is it not recommended to do a loop? Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't recommend building a bot this way because when your user, in this case me, but when your user is asking, is here at this point in the conversation, they're going to be stuck, right? And you always want to give them the ability to pull the ripcord, as it were, and not be stuck in a conversational loop, which is a really subpar conversational experience. So let's say a real world example of this is, let's say I'm asking questions about English 203, but then I want to be able to ask questions of English 304. I have no way of leaving this conversation or ending this conversation unless I refresh the browser that I'm in, for instance, which is not great. Yeah, that is what I meant. I see several people typing, so I'm going to take a sip of coffee and see what happens. Can we have a press S to skip and have that trigger an end node for the user? Yeah, Brojovic, exactly. So there are a couple of different ways that you could implement this ripcord, but this is just for testing. So I'm showing you this. But there are a couple of different ways you can use intents. You can use blah blah blah. You can have a menu. There are lots of creative ways I've seen people on the Discord server do this, which is really impressive, and it's always fun to see. Okay, so I wanted to show off maybe some more questions that we might ask of this syllabus, maybe something like, how much of my grade is the final exam worth? Which is a question that I asked often. And we see here the final exam is worth 30% of your grade. What else? I want to get more specific. In this course, what am I reading by Wordsworth? William Wordsworth was a romantic British poet. I want to know if it can, I don't even know if it can. Oh, look at that. All right, so here we go. You'll be reading the following works by Wordsworth in this course, and it just pulls this information from my syllabus. I wish I had a bot when I was new. Yeah, like honestly, these are questions that I ask my colleagues and peers all the time. And it would be really great if I just had a bot like this that could do this for all of my classes. So the idea for this kind of use case is it's like dead simple. All we've done is we've just uploaded our syllabus, and we can do this for each of our classes. And now we have a bot that can query all of these syllabi for us, give us the correct information about grades and dates and what we're reading on a given day, and then provide us with that information. No need to annoy your prof, no need to annoy your peers, for example. The sucker's being built tonight in grad school. Good luck with grad school, Angleby. I love it. Grad school was really fun for me. I really enjoyed it. And it would have been even more enjoyable if I had these kinds of productivity tools. Because if you're anything like me, I struggled with like 10 different note-taking apps until I realized that maybe another note-taking app wasn't going to solve my problem. And actually, there was a better way to think about the questions I was having as a student. I will say, perhaps as a sidebar here, as a person in the workforce now and no longer a student, there are probably ways that I could implement this kind of bot or this kind of workflow in my current day-to-day. But the reason it works so well for students is because the syllabus operates as a single source of truth, right? The syllabus operates as the knowledge base in this case, quite literally. And so you have that reliable information, and it works really well because that information is not really subject to change unless your professor issues a syllabus change, which is like very rare. It shouldn't happen often. And so that's a perfect use case for this, for something that isn't like e-commerce, which I kind of love. Like, again, as Sab said, I wish I had this kind of example when I was in school. Let's talk a bit more about other things that we can add to a bot like this one, both because we have a bit of time left, and then also because we can let us imagine today. I think when I was originally iterating on this bot and trying to figure out like what kinds of things could I do. RTG asks an excellent question. So where would you publish the bot? Would you just use it inside the studio? How can I show you this? I think typically what I would do, let me answer your question first. I'll make sure to publish my changes, make sure to share them, and then I would hit share, get the URL for the shareable widget, and then access it on my phone. So the real answer to your question, RTG, is that I'm imagining this primarily as a mobile experience. So I wouldn't whip out my laptop in the middle of the university bookstore, but I would whip out my phone and ask questions. Or I would whip out my phone if my friend was like, hey, what are we reading in April for this class? And I can say, no problem. Let me ask my assistant, and we'd figure that out. So that's what I would do. So I would just hit share, and perhaps I can show you here. So if I hit share, and then I'm gonna send this link to myself on Slack. One moment, please, and show you how I had imagined iterating on this. There are a couple of different ways you could do this. So you could have this saved to a bookmark on your phone. You could save this as your homepage in your browser, like on Chrome. I think is another way you could do this, just to build the habit of asking questions of your digital assistant, so on and so forth. But for example, this is the bot that I just built. WhatsApp integration, yeah, as Narukeru says, you could do it in like Facebook Messenger, which I'm assuming you have on your phone anyways, and talk to it there. But this is like the dead simplest way, is just to send yourself that link. So let's say I ask a question, and then I'm getting the response, and then I'm imagining this kind of back and forth. So I'm asking, I cannot believe I'm holding up my phone to the camera as if I was a much older person than I am, but in any case. So here, this is the conversational interface I'm imagining, right? So I'm getting questions about English 203. I'll say, what am I reading in April? And then we get, and then I would just have this saved. My boomer is showing. It absolutely is. But look how well it's working, right? I'll take my displaying my boomer for the world to see if it meant that I could have an AI assistant that would make studying like 1 billion times easier than it was. I do agree with you, Sabrina, though. So RTG, I hope that answers your question. The idea here was I'm imagining using this live on my cell phone, but there are a couple of different ways you can deploy. And I just want to remind everyone, I access that link just by hitting share here, just by getting what we call the shareable widget. You all have very creative names for that link that we share. So anyways, back to the kind of brainstorming session I was imagining. So when I was first ideating on building how would a student use Botpress and what would a student like to do, actually, Dark Age, that is exactly where I was going with this. So you ask, what if we ask the bot to make a study plan, I'm assuming is your question. Equally, Patrick, who leads Thursday's streams, asked me, like, what if it could, generate study questions? What if it could help you generate like a practice set if you were in like a STEM field? Or what if it could have you go further than just provide information about your syllabi, but also do things like ingest your notes, produce questions about them, and then spit them back out at you so you can study. So you could just say, like, for English 203, get me a bunch of questions. That's something that you could do with the AI task. That's something you could do with some of the AI tools that we're introducing to the studio. So I don't have that in front of me yet because I wanted to show like the very simplest example of this. But there again, because LLMs are powering everything here, there are really very few limits to what you can do. I use the word data ingestion on purpose there. The idea is like you have data that you want to produce questions based on, and then go forward from there. And so if you wanted to produce some study questions, I don't see why that wouldn't work, for instance, so on and so forth. So this is the AI study bot that I wish that I had when I was in college. But again, I think the idea here is pushing chatbots beyond things like e-commerce or beyond things like gimmicky toys, which are fun to use. Like, of course, I use them myself and they're enjoyable. But really thinking about them in terms of like a productivity tool, not just for something you use when you have to do a return, but also kind of reframing in your mind, like, okay, I'm studying. And so the typical things that are recommended to me are things like note-taking apps or task management software. And those are kind of, those are great in certain contexts. But can we do those processes better in ways that kind of leverage this conversational experience, which is, of course, what Botpress does. And so this is that was my idea for this week. And I hope that perhaps if you're watching this later on YouTube or if you're in chat today, if you're inspired by this, I would love to see some future iterations of bots that help you study better, be a better student. Although I think that's a very fraught term, but in any case, be more efficient with your time, things like time management. Okay, typically at the end of these streams now, what I like to do is kind of go through like a power hour. I don't think is the right word, but it's the only thing that I want to say. But maybe some exciting updates from the Botpress studio that have been released in the last couple of days. And so I'll just power through these here. If you've got any last minute burning questions that you want to ask at the end of the stream, now is your chance, or forever hold your bot building piece. As I kind of run through these final exciting changes, feel free to pop your questions in chat. But okay, the first question now, the first thing I'm going to show all of you, I uploaded a video about this to YouTube like half an hour ago. So if you saw that, the cat's out of the bag. But many of you have been asking for a very long time about the ability to disable the personality agent on specific nodes. I'm very pleased to tell you that you can now do this. So just pop into, make sure your personality agent is enabled, and then just turn it off here. So you can toggle it on specific nodes, and you can have them vary even within the same workflow in case you want to make sure that the same message gets sent every time. So if you're talking about stuff like pricing or appointment details and you don't want any personality added on top of those messages, you can disable them here, which is very exciting. I know for a lot of you in chat or a lot of you on Discord as well. Yeah, the personality agent can do a lot of different things. And so sometimes if you want to turn it off, definitely a good idea. And then maybe the last and most exciting thing that I'm going to talk about today before we head off to enjoy our afternoons or whatever time it is where you are, is you may have noticed my variables are gone. They're no longer in my top right inspector window. Where the heck did they go? They're over here on the bottom left. So we've introduced a new variables panel here so that you can have more control and easier access to your variables without having to click around in different menus. So maybe like a quick demo on how this works. So now the create variable button is just over here, and I'm going to name this demo variable. You can change the scope of the variable right from this menu, which is new, and you can of course change the type, which is the same. And you can add that here. Less clicks, less mouse miles, exactly. This is like genuinely really exciting. And so probably my favorite thing about this feature, and again, I'll pop this in the demo here, is that it shows the value as you're testing your bot. Let me show you what I mean. So I'll just pop in this example here, and I'll collect this. I'll say hi, and I'll just say soup. And you can see here in the bottom left panel, the variable panel is now showing me what the variable's value is. And so it's been set to soup because I entered soup previously, and it's showing here. So as you're testing your bot, it's going to minimize the amount of times that you need to open the event debugger, which is huge because now it means, again, easier building, which we love. And then now the very last thing I will show all of you is that if you click this, you will see here, you can copy the value to the clipboard. So you see it's holding soup. Or if you click the actual name of the variable, you'll see reference was copied to clipboard. And what that means is it's just saving the actual reference. So in this case, it's at workflow.demo. And so again, less typing, less clicking, less repetitive action. We love to see it. Very exciting. This is hard eyes emoji. It absolutely is hard eyes emoji. Perhaps my boomer is showing again because I don't think I'm supposed to say that part out loud, but you know. All right, so let us recap. We built a very lightweight version of a kind of like studying dashboard or studying virtual assistant bot that we'd love to see. And we've populated here with some real life examples from my real life. The reason I wanted to show you this today is to broaden your horizons and urge you to imagine different use cases for bots like these that are not just e-commerce, for example. I encourage all of you to get creative about your bots. I'm going to wrap up stream there for today. I will say I'm going to do slightly shorter streams from now on, just because an hour is a very long time. Good heavens. But in any case, it was thank you all of you for dropping in this week. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you got something out of this. I would love to see examples of bots that you've built, so do share them in chat or on our Discord server or on social media or whatnot. Thank you everyone for joining. Much appreciated. I will say, keep an eye out on the various short form video sharing channels in the future, because rumor has it, Botpress will be making an appearance on those soon. Thank you all of you for joining. I hope that you all had a lovely time, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye. Happy bot building.